when our performance is tied to survival. You're there to play a tournament, and playing that tournament is tied to your survival. You're hoping that you will make money. How do you play for passion? Like, I don't really want to compete, but there's not really like a ton of support of playing the game without being in that sort of competitive structure, without performing for survival. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Long and Short of It. I'm Jennifer Giroux.
I'm Jaacob Bowden.
And we are here in our home in Detroit, and we are not doing a golf podcast.
We're not doing a golf podcast.
But we're using your golf journey to
start a conversation about the deeper meanings in life. We do use golf as a starting point. So we've got a deck of cards here that have 80 cards in it. And each of those on them have different things, cool things that have happened to me in my 20 plus years as a global professional golfer.
An explorer.
So we draw a card. You haven't seen these. And so you react. I give a little more context, and then we just kind of see where the conversation goes.
I'm taking the top card, and I'm just going straight to the top. And this is fun. The monkeys of Marrakesh. So Marrakesh is in Morocco, and monkeys in Marrakesh.
What does it make you think of?
Well, immediately it makes me think of when we were living in Europe, how that really allowed you to play in different tournaments in other parts of the globe. You went to Kenya, you went to the Emirates, you went to Morocco, to Marrakesh, you went to Turkey, you went a lot of different places, and just being there, allowed you access to different places. So, and I forget with Morocco, did you go there? You went there a few times, because I think once was maybe for a tournament, another one was maybe for a golf retreat or odd outing or something like that. Yeah. So what is this about, Jaacob?
The monkeys.
The monkeys
Marrakesh.
Marrakesh.
Yeah. So one of the cool things about living in Switzerland, as we did from 2007 to 2014, was that it opened up a lot of different parts of the globe that I may not have gone to otherwise. So if you're in the U.S. as a professional golfer in the winter, you might think of going to Florida or Texas or California, somewhere in the southern part of the United States, or
right.
Maybe you go to the Caribbean or something.
Yeah.
And when we were in Europe, it was similar. Zurich, Switzerland had a winter climate, and I was playing more tournaments at that time. So the Europe, as people kind of know it, shuts down a little bit, and then people go to warmer spots, both as touring professionals, but then people that want to go on golf holidays.
Yeah.
So golf holidays, you might go to Turkey or somewhere in Africa or Morocco.
Yeah.
So yes, there was. I've been to Marrakesh multiple times.
Yeah.
Some of those were for golf holidays. I guess people in the U.S. would say golf vacation.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you want me as a pro golfer to go on your golf vacation, please get in touch. I can do that.
That's true.
But then also, I would go play tournaments.
Yeah.
In the Middle East, in Australia, in Asia, in Southern Europe.
Yeah.
And Marrakesh was one of the places.
Where's the monkeys? Yes, geez. Oh my gosh, what a setup.
People need contacts involved.
Or like,
this side they don't.
We're just taking the whole route. Okay. So
we're almost there.
Oh my goodness.
So when I was doing these tournaments in Marrakesh, I played with the first couple rounds. I was paired with a local Marrakesh, or a local pro golfer, Moroccan pro golfer.
Yeah, lives in Morocco.
I think he might have lived in Rabat or something like that, but he lived in Morocco. He's from Morocco. And so he was very friendly, and he befriended me, I guess. And it's nice when you have a local tour guide, so to speak. So when we finished the tournament, and he liked to have his beer, so he wanted to take me out and show me on the town. And it's nice sometimes when you're in a different culture to have that local guide to navigate your way through it, and to get you to some really special places. So one of the places he took me was the Medina, the market.
Yeah.
And so we'd walk around the Medina, and one of the things that we came across was this photo op of you could take pictures as a tourist with monkeys. And I thought, like, whoa, this is kind of cool. And there's a picture that we can show here on the video of a monkey sitting on top of my head. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. And I'm like holding this monkey. And then I thought it was really cool. But then also the guy was a little rough with the monkey. He would like whack him with a stick to get so the monkey was friendly with me, fortunately, but it was also challenging to see the treatment of the monkey. And it reminded me also of like when I went to Kenya for a challenge tour event. And I saw as I was driving to and from my hotel to the tournament, I came across an intersection where there was an elephant, which is like, oh, cool, there's an elephant there. It was kind of like a teenager elephant, not a fully grown, but not a baby, I guess. I don't know, whatever a baby elephant is called. And the elephant was sadly tied to a post and couldn't go more than a few feet. So it was like really cool, but then it was also kind of really sad, I guess, to see it because of the way that it was just confined to a space. But anyway, I don't know. So that's what the monkeys in Marrakesh is. You have a gorilla story. Should you share that?
Well, before we do that, I actually just want to call out one of the things as you were talking about it, like a few things that bubbled up for me. One is when beauty sits next to harm or exploitation. And so I just think like the duality there, I mean, Morocco is such a beautiful country, and the pictures that you had from Marrakesh were just stunning, just rich, deep colors and textures. And
it was really interesting also from a culture standpoint, being from North America, and then we're living in Europe. It's very Christian society, so it'd be normal to hear the bells, the church bells, but then
the call to prayer as well.
So you'd hear the call to prayer, the song of that multiple times a day. So that was interesting. But
but I think like this aspect of like I think even in our own homes, just beauty sitting next to exploitation and harm. So even that like image of you talking about moving through Nairobi, which is Kenya's beautiful. It's gorgeous, and Nairobi is a very dynamic megacity, really. And then to see this like elephant in captivity, and just how we sort of sit with that on a day-to-day basis, beauty next to harm, beauty next to exploitation, beauty next to captivity. So that's like one thing that comes up for me, and just sort of these experiences that, we sort of just take in, these images that we take in on a day-to-day. So that's just like one thing really quickly that comes up for me. But I think more to the point of golf is performing for survival. Like when your identity is tied to performing in a certain way. So there you are in Morocco, and even when you're in Kenya, you're there to play a tournament. And playing that tournament is tied to your survival. Like you're hoping you will do well, you're hoping that you will make money, so that you can get paid for your time that you've invested. And there's a very narrow window to do that because of the way that we've talked about again and again that golf is structured. But then you see this animal, this monkey, who is in captivity and has to perform in a certain way. Otherwise, he doesn't, or they don't live.
Like,
so
he's
gonna get whacked. Maybe he gets his food gets withheld. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, like, for you in your golf journey, like, have you ever what is that when I say like when our performance is tied to survival? Has that felt like that for you? Because I think like, you talk about like, how do you play for passion? Like, how do you play you love the game? And that's like your more recent journey is like, you're coming out of this, like, I don't really want to compete, but there's not really like a ton of support of playing the game without being in that sort of competitive structure, without performing for survival. So I don't know, have you thought about it like that? Or like what comes up for you when I link this monkey that was performing for its survival, and you're at this golf tournament trying to perform for your survival? And I don't know.
I guess that's a little bit of it's amazing to see beautiful things, and performances also can have a beauty to them. But when the structures and systems are around them are inhumane in a way, or challenging in ways that they don't need to be, it provides for a opportunity to talk about the systems around those things that could make it better. So in golf in particular, and sports in general, current systems, usually people start playing games as a kid and they love it. And then when money gets introduced to it, and when it starts to become the emphasis is on the competition and winning versus the joy of the game.
Yeah.
There's nothing like seeing someone perform in their passion space.
Yeah.
I think that's even, to me, that's even better than seeing someone perform in a competitive arena, like a battle of gladiators thing. That draws attention, but like I would rather see someone just as they're doing it for the joy of it, and not necessarily because maybe there is a survival component to it, but like I remember there would be times where I would be playing, and this was maybe before we met, where things were so tight and it was like, all right, I love this, I want to play in this tournament, but if I don't perform in this tournament, then I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills this month.
Well, yeah, and I think,
that adds a lot of pressure to it, and you can grow through that, but then also like the system doesn't need to be like that. Like we could treat people a little bit better, and I don't know.
It's hard because even I think about this guy who must have captured this monkey, or maybe he bought this monkey, and he's relying on this monkey to perform in a certain way for his survival. You know, so he's getting money so he can maybe put food on the table. It's his job. Like he's in the job of entertainment. He's taken possession of this monkey or whatever, the person who had the elephant in Nairobi. And I just think I think there's almost like a metaphor here, how we all just we entrap each other in these cycles of performity and tying that to our survival, and I just think that that's what's really interesting about, I even think about that with, my own self, and what ways I played, I was a really good soccer player growing up. And I remember there was a moment where you would always see me with a ball at my foot. I'd be always dribbling, and anybody who knows me from
that point when you started, did you?
I loved it. I just had so much fun with it. It was joyful, was playing. And then, as is the case with a lot of kids, and they see talent, there's a whole system that comes around of like, oh, get her into this league and you got to do, and all of a sudden it became my job. At like 14, 15 years old, I suddenly had this thing that was being sort of crushed with the expectations and the responsibility. And you could even feel the pressure of the parent, like, oh, my kid's got to perform because now everybody sees me as like the one with the star athlete and things. And suddenly I wasn't dribbling that ball as much anymore in my free time. And so suddenly even my performance became in a way tied to survival. In a way, that's what led to me leaving the state of Michigan and seeking college completely across the country, because I needed to unlock myself from that identity, because I wanted to see who else I was, because there was no room for me to be anything else.
Well, in the beginning, you were good enough to get a full ride scholarship.
Yeah, I mean, I had offers and things like that. I mean, it's not really about that, but it's just about that aspect of the system that pulled around it, that there was no middle ground for me just to enjoy the sport. Like if I had talent, then there's a whole thing around like, well, let's get her in this and let's get her in this, rather than she can just play and have fun. And I didn't really have parents that regulated that. They just said yes to all the opportunity. They didn't really think about it. And I think about this with one of our nieces who was a high-performing gymnast at a very young age. And it was like she had a whole job around her. There was no extra time. And
she would finish school and maybe have 4 hours from like 4 to 8 practice every day, and then like 6 hours on Saturday. It was just all consuming.
Yeah, and I think about this monkey. The reason why this guy has this monkey is because, you didn't know at the time, but you came and you were like, oh, that's cute. I want to put a monkey on my head. And a lot of tourists probably do that.
How am I gonna get?
And you don't realize that you're actually a part of sustaining and feeding the system of capture, enslavement, exploitation, performing for survival.
It was fine until I saw the guy whacking the monkey with a stick, and didn't like it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a lot of like circus life too, and just animal, like captivity. And the last thing that brings up for me then, and this takes me to that last point of like the duality of like captivity and freedom, how they sort of kind of sit together almost on the same line. Like you're there having this free experience, this monkey's captive, but you're kind of captive as well in the system that is.
In a way, like, in sports, but then like, I guess you could say that our society is a little bit like zoom out a little bit, and it's not just sports or performance. I think we're getting to a point in humanity where information is traveling so much, and we can travel around the globe in ways that we couldn't previously. Like if we would have tried to cross the Atlantic Ocean, it would take months on the boat and you might not survive. And now we can just hop on a plane and like be there. So the world is so much more accessible now. And so we can see and experience so many things that we couldn't. And I think there's enough, at least to me, you can see that we don't need to make people struggle as much, or have systems that make people struggle as much as they do.
Yeah.
If you want to challenge yourself, I think that's good. And I don't know, this makes me think of like universal basic income. If you go to, I think
what a good link.
Something in like United Kingdom or Northern Ireland or something like that, where there was stipends provided to artists.
Oh, that's in Ireland. Yeah.
They can.
Every artist, I think in Ireland, yeah.
Fully focus on the craft and the joy and the love of creating art and developing that.
And the country sees that as socially valuable, culturally valuable.
From a society standpoint. Yeah. But then you're like at least giving that person the space to engage with their passion and not have to like pull away from the development of that passion to like do things that they maybe don't want to do to survive.
There's so many artists that don't make it through, just like with golfers, because it's such a narrow window, and it really takes one person to say, oh, that person's got talent. We're going to put all of these resources around them, or we're going to sponsor them. We're going to buy their art. We're going to sponsor them in the tournament, or what have you. And therefore, it just creates that narrow window rather than, I mean, what would it be like if the PGA of America use some of its abundant money to actually support more golfers just in the everyday realm.
I forget if we've talked about this in the
sure, yes, or we talking about all the time.
In this was one of my golf videos. I feel like this came up recently, but so much of our systems are top loaded.
Yeah.
An excessive amount goes to just a few people, and then so many people are left to just struggle to make ends meet. And arguably, you could say like, oh, that's great for a few people, but like arguably, you could say it's not even great for them because they have to live in the society.
Absolutely, everybody's captured in.
No, there's you got to put yourself put a fence around your compound or whatever, and you can't go out, and you end up being lonely and unsettled, and you still got to drive around on the bad roads. That I don't know.
No, it's true. I mean, I think as we just kind of wind down, just think about the long and short of it. I mean, for me, just, when I pulled up that card, Monkeys in Marrakesh, I really didn't know where we would go. But I think what I just realized is just even for myself, how do we be more conscious of how we are participating or supporting or sustaining systems that are displayed through practices that are harmful ultimately.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do because we're all just like, you in that moment, you were a tourist, and you're like, oh, this is great. And I even think about that. I was in Malaysia years ago, and there was this big white boa, and this guy was, he put it on my shoulders, and then, I had this great picture of me with this beautiful white boa, like it's yellow and white, an albino, and it's amazing. But then if I recall, I had to give him money after that. He had captured that animal. And we don't really have these dialogues within everyday conversation around how these things come up, in everyday life and how they actually impact us, how we're participating in it, how we're even sustaining it and things like that. What's the long and short of it for you?
Well, and then systems also are especially in the U.S. here, are so heavily incentivize competition and winner take all and money and fame, like money hoarding in a way, and fame, instead of incentivizing or giving more incentive to passion.
And just support and what that does for the culture.
So yes, it's better for society as a whole and the culture, and for everyone. And so I don't know. Long and short of this, long and short of it, interesting topic, and it like diverged in different ways. I guess I don't know. The long and short of it is that we need to rethink our systems a little bit.
All right, so they'll leave it at that. Yeah.
There's better ways that we can do it and that we should move towards, and that's going to be challenging and it might take a while. Ultimately, I think that we'll get there. I hope that we get there.
But I think it starts off with just like our individual behavior, right? Just becoming aware first of like, how are we contributing? How are we participating?
Yeah.
Being more aware on that level. That becomes more manageable, because if you say like these systems, it's like, oh my gosh, right? That's so huge. And but like, what can we meaningfully do in our everyday life to become more aware, to become more sensitive, to start to shift the behavior in slightly different ways to the degree that we have power. So for example, if you're to go back to Marrakesh, maybe you wouldn't support that because that guy's out there doing that, engaging those practices.
That would be a tough one, because it's like, on one hand, it's like, wow, cool. I'm seeing a monkey that I would never normally get to see, and it's out. But then also it's got, it's on a leash and it's getting whacked. I didn't notice it getting whacked right away.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like if I would have, and when I saw that elephant on the side of the road, I felt, it was like, whoa, cool, there's an elephant. Oh, wait a minute. It's like tied to a pole, and it's just in a dirt, muddy circle. And it's like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. On that note, well, I feel a little rushed because it's Thanksgiving here. And so I actually have carrots in the oven because we have to like go. So I'm like, all right, yada, 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 let's roll. But I mean, I love the thoughtful conversation, and it actually I feel like this is gonna be something we're like gonna be carrying and we're talking about for the rest of the evening. But thank you so much for tuning in. Any final words before we?
In the spirit of U.S. Thanksgiving, thank you.
Yeah, gratitude
to all of you that are listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to that monkey for the opportunity to learn something, I guess.
Yes, and to reflect and sat with you for all these years. And that was a long time
years ago, and it's, here we are talking about it. So thank you for the growth and
the reflection and the awareness.
Yeah.
Tune in, share. If you have any comments, ideas, feedback, drop us a note in the comments. We've been enjoying seeing those. You can send us a direct message, private message.
Use our call-in number if we want.
Call-in number.
313-356-6830. If you want to leave a message as a prompt for us to talk about something, to ask us a question, or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, in the spirit of that, I'm really just grateful to have these conversations and to be present with you and to, keep kind of expanding the lens a little bit. So thanks to everybody for tuning in and being in our home, joining us on this journey. So on that note.
That's the long and short of it.
That's the long and short of it. Bye, everybody.
See you next time.